Two main positive rewards come to those who are received into the community of Christ as we know it here on our land. One, not only do you declare your exodus from the great conveyor belt of a meaningless life as it dumps droves of humanity into a dark and equally meaningless death, but you also can now enjoy the experience of a life full of meaning, a life that struggles to preserve and advance into the future, a community that will be worth entering for the young and the yet to be born. This struggle is the redemptive experience of living in Christ's sacrifice by simply doing daily what's right and what has to be done. Yours is the joy that comes when what you think, what you say, and what you do all move in harmony with each other. And every time we old ones see one of you new members of the community take your stand against the wrong, fight for what's right, or daily do what has to be done, no matter how great or small the task, it affirms to us that all the sacrifices that we and others before us have made, all in order to pass on this community to you and to the future, were worth the price, that you were worth our sacrifice because what we have given was worth something to you. The second reward resides in the life of the Spirit. The spiritual gifts coming to us from cheerful men, women, and children, buoyed up by zest and humor, enthusiasm, and camaraderie. This spirit of life is felt and expressed to us in supernaturally powerful words of spoken truth, in the songs of community, in the love service of our people, in community crafts, skills, work, play, and the other myriad activities of the community of life. It is symbolized in the ringing of the great bell that calls us to Sunday meetings, or that rings out in celebration at weddings, or in its solemn tolling of the knell for parting loved ones. It is embodied in the sounds of children laughing and playing at church picnics or around the old homestead, and joyous people dancing Israeli horas at weddings and community celebrations, even the happy rattle and jingle of the traces of draft horses and mules as they plow through springtime fields, or in the spring water fragrance of those freshly plowed fields, or in the smell of a corral full of horses and hay, or in the sounds of cows lowing in the morning dew before milking time, or of chickens clucking as they settle on their roost in the evenings, or the covering of bird song over all the land as we sit on our porch swings in the fall and watch smiling neighbors strolling happily through the farm, preparing for Thanksgiving and the coming fair. And out of this cheerfulness and joy comes the gratitude for great and wondrous gifts. And when you stop to think about it, all of it is quite a miracle for the day in which we live. And that thought, the day in which we live, brings up another dimension to our determination and pledge as a people, that we pledge to stand firm against the annihilating gale of a desacralizing modernity with all of its seductions, distractions, and diversions, with all of its enticements to immorality and to betrayal of the community and its social ethic, an ethic that nurtures relationships and life. This is where the uncompromising devotion to our commitment and our duty will be put to the severest test, and the hurricane forces intermittently sweeping through to envelop and besiege our bright city, to seduce it, and if that fails, to slander, smear, and strike at it with brute force and hatred toward the good. The rebirth of such a community through the lives of those who have preceded this young generation is still new, even still seemingly fragile, just as was its original birth in Judea 2,000 years ago. And the struggle to survive can be daunting in an often harsh and cruel world. Two cultures struggle in their conflicting worldviews, the culture of death and the culture of life. And which one wins will be determined by the greatness of the honor that you hold in your heart today for the commitment you're making and for the God, the people, and the life you're making it to. So you must know with certainty that no matter how much it hurts, how much you may have to suffer and sacrifice, even at times unjustly, you will never abandon your commitment to these things. There is no neutral ground, no peace treaty, no compromise between the forces of life and the forces of death. For in between these cultures is a no man's land, a wasteland with sinkholes of despair, sulphurous, bubbling cauldrons of sin and bitterness, where the living dead eternally thrash, flounder, and wander, always in perpetual turmoil, endless restlessness, and bitter rage. This is the realm of the self-condemned, who have lost their integrity, dignity, and any sense of a clear conscience or purpose. Peter said it would have been better for them if they'd never been born into the community of Christ at all. Such a battle with such forces can at times be grueling beyond normal human endurance. So you must also know when you start that you have an unswerving devotion to and relationship with the God who alone can uphold you. You must even know that you have burning within you a great indignation at the violation of his moral and social order of life, most especially whenever you are the violator. Just to know that such violations destroy life and create cultures of death should cause such indignation to burn within you. So you must also see it as your individual destiny to give everything to restore this order, this community of life, and that you will hold in contempt every comfort, every ease, every temptation that would take you away from your destiny in realizing on earth the life of this Jerusalem that is descending from God. And finally, you must commit to do this even if the battle grows more severe and requires the last full measure of your devotion, not to any state, but to love, to God. This is the very meaning of being a Christian, establishing a community in a wilderness, a decent place in an increasingly indecent world, a place where the yet-to-be-born can find hope and a home. There's no getting around it. It requires some pain, as Jesus and the apostles told us. Its rebirth for us as a community started with precarious steps out of what our neighbors called Hell's Kitchen and the inner-city urban jungle of Lower East Side Manhattan. Many of the roots we sought to tap into were buried deep beneath the accumulated debris of apostasy or accommodation to the world. Our spiritual ground was always trying to shift until we dug to bedrock in every area of life. It seemed like there was only the rubble of collapsed walls and burnt gates. We came across the remains of the holy city like pioneers coming across a charred settlement and a rough cemetery on the empty plains where courageous ancestors had once lived and then died trying to build a new world, even when their vision was incomplete. The mutilated body of truth and life lay scattered in the rubble, nothing but dried bones amid ascending smoke. And we were asked by the skeptical, the cynical, and the merely curious, but also by the hopeful, can these bones really live? We wondered ourselves when we saw that blood had stained the soil, and the smoke-riddled stench still rose from the charred ruins to fill our nostrils with the odor of death. But then we knew we were not the first to be called to sacrifice, and we could envision the community as Jesus described it, a city set upon a hill, the light of the world. We could still hear the age-old sound of singing and laughter. We could still see, at least in our minds, the dancing feet, the working hands, the sights and sounds of rejoicing at our children's and grandchildren's weddings. We could envision God's creatures, great and small, coming together in a community of life. And we knew, even way back then, that there would once again be singing and dancing, mirth and gladness, the joy of work and the peace of rest, in a new land shining with hope and promise. And now it's your turn to make the choices, to put your hand to the plow. In a way, it's the only real choice of a person's entire life. One such pledge is enough for a lifetime when you mean it. And the question for you, as we stand ready to induct you into this wonderful companionship of the committed, into this community coming from the heart of God, is, do you really mean it?